Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. We love to take a deep dive into some of the most interesting cybersecurity news out there. And today we're going to be focusing on some of the recent data breaches and vulnerabilities that have happened.
Oh, yeah. Always something going on.
I know, right? Never stops. So we're going to be taking all this information from the CISO Daily Update for November 26, 2024.
Oh, wow. So this is like a daily briefing for the people who are in charge of cybersecurity for organizations.
Yeah, exactly, for those chief information security officers. So you can think of this as like their cheat sheet. And it's just a fascinating mix of like cautionary tales and really insightful things. And I think by the end of this deep dive, you'll come away with a much better understanding of just how the cybersecurity landscape is looking these days.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
For sure. So let's just jump right into it. One of the first things that caught my eye was this whole thing about the alleged breach of the DDOT.
DDOT.
Yeah, so that's the District Department of Transportation.
Okay, yeah.
So hackers are claiming they got like all this transportation data, personnel data, and it's supposedly all over the dark web already.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's still early days, though, so a lot of the details are kind of murky. But it immediately made me think about public sector organizations,
I see what you mean, because they're often managing really critical infrastructure, but their security budgets are so much smaller compared to private companies.
Exactly. And so it makes them just like a prime target for cyber criminals who know that they might have weaker defenses.
Right. It's like they know exactly where to go, where they can get in the easiest.
Yeah, it's almost like a David versus Goliath scenario. But in this case, Goliath is packing some serious digital heat.
Oh, yeah.
But here's where things get kind of interesting, because we have this contrast in New York State with these two huge insurance companies.
Oh, yeah.
You've probably heard of them, GEICO and Travelers.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So they just agreed to this massive $11.3 million settlement.
Wow.
Yeah, for data breaches that impacted more than 120,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
It is. And so this settlement isn't just about the money.
No, it's setting a precedent.
Exactly. It's saying, hey, companies, you are accountable for cybersecurity failures.
Right. You got to get it together.
You got to get it together. So for GEICO, hackers actually exploited these vulnerabilities that were in their online quoting tools, and a lot of us use those, right?
All the time, yeah, to compare rates and stuff.
Exactly. And then Travelers had these compromised agent credentials.
Without multi-factor authentication.
Nope. That's like cybersecurity 101.
Seriously, like the basics.
And you would think that companies of that size would have it covered.
Right, you would think.
So it really shows that cybersecurity isn't just about preventing attacks. It's also about what do you do when the attack happens.
It's a response.
Right. What's your response and your recovery plan?
Having that all in place.
Exactly. So speaking of attacks that have really serious consequences, this next one is pretty alarming.
Oh, boy.
So this massive database got leaked. 1.2 million credit card records. I know, and it's everything. Card numbers, expiration dates, CVV codes, the whole 9 yards.
So basically anyone who had their info in that database is at risk now for identity theft.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a huge deal.
Wow, that raises some serious questions about how such a large data set was even compromised in the first place.
I know, right? So was it like encryption methods failing or not enough protection against these targeted attacks?
Yeah, it suggests that there are some deeper issues with data security practices going on.
And we're not even just talking about, fraud and identity theft happening right now.
Right. This data can be used later on down the line.
Exactly. Like, think about those really targeted phishing campaigns or even creating those synthetic identities for large-scale fraud.
Yeah, the damage could be huge.
So huge. And it's a good reminder that while companies often focus on protecting customer data, we also see cases like what happened in Columbus with the data leak there.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Potentially like 500,000 residents had their information exposed.
Wow. And didn't the city get criticized for not doing enough to protect people?
Yeah, they really did, for both their limited response and the lack of protection they offered to residents in the first place.
It's a tough situation.
It is, and it's a good reminder that any organization that's collecting data, public or private, they have a responsibility to protect it.
Absolutely. It's an ethical and a legal obligation.
But okay, let's move on to something a little lighter. I guess you could say, have you ever heard of a hacker using his skills to drum up new business?
I can't say that I have. That sounds pretty unusual.
It is pretty unusual. So this guy, Nicholas Michael Closter from Kansas City, he allegedly hacked into the networks of a gym chain and nonprofit.
Okay, so far sounds pretty typical.
I know, right? But here's the thing. He didn't do it to steal data.
He didn't. What did he do then?
He wanted to access their security cameras and router settings.
Wait, so he broke into their systems just to see if he could?
Yeah, basically. And then he emailed them and said, hey, your security's terrible. Hire me to fix it.
You're kidding, right?
I'm not kidding. That was his sales strategy.
Wow, that's bold and probably also illegal, right?
Yeah, incredibly illegal. He's actually facing charges that could put him in prison.
That's wild.
It's a wild story, and it's a cautionary tale because it really highlights that even if you're well-intentioned, your actions can have some serious legal consequences in the cybersecurity world.
For sure. You got to play by the rules.
Exactly. Okay,
Yep.
so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a threat that we're seeing more and more these days, ransomware.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So Microlise, familiar with them?
Microlise. Not ringing a bell.
So they're a company in the UK that does vehicle tracking solutions for some big names like DHL and Serco.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they got hit with this cyber attack that really disrupted services for a lot of their clients.
So this is a good example of how these cyber attacks have real-world consequences.
Exactly. We're not just talking about data being stolen.
Mm.
This attack actually messed with vehicle tracking systems and even like panic alarms.
Wow, so this could really impact people's safety.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that ransomware can go way beyond the digital world.
Right. It can actually cause chaos in the physical world, too.
And thankfully, in this case, it seems like Microlise was able to say that their customer systems data was okay.
Okay, that's good.
But they did confirm that corporate data from their headquarters was stolen like 1.2 terabytes worth by this group called SafePay.
SafePay ransomware. I've heard of those guys. They're nasty.
Yeah, they are. And it's interesting because we're seeing this distinction between corporate data and customer data more and more.
Yeah, I think hackers are getting smarter. They know what data will cause the most problems or make them the most money.
Yeah, they go for the stuff that'll really hurt.
Exactly.
So we've got data breaches hitting public and private sectors. We've got a hacker with a pretty unconventional marketing approach and the real-world chaos of ransomware. What do you say we dive into the world of vulnerabilities now?
Let's do it. I'm ready for more. So the CISO Daily Update actually has this whole section on vulnerabilities.
Oh.
It's like their watch list, things to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, it's kind of like the hacker's playbook in a way, right?
Exactly. Like, here's what we're going to try and target.
Here's the low-hanging fruit.
So first up, we've got these MySCADA, MyPro systems.
Oh, yeah, I read a bit about those.
Apparently, there are some pretty critical vulnerabilities that could allow attackers to remotely get into these systems.
Remotely.
Yeah, and they don't even need any login credentials.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, for those who might not know, HMSCADA systems are used to control and monitor all sorts of industrial processes.
So we're talking like power grids.
Yeah, power grids, manufacturing plants, water treatment facilities.
So basically the stuff that keeps society running.
Exactly, the essential stuff. And HMI stands for Human-Machine Interface. And SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition.
Yeah, not something you want hackers messing with.
Not at all. And these vulnerabilities are serious stuff, like OS command injection, where an attacker can basically trick the system into running their own malicious commands. And then you've got path traversal, where they can get into files and directories that they shouldn't be able to.
So they can really wreak havoc.
Yeah, these vulnerabilities could give attackers full control over critical infrastructure. Scary thought.
It is, but at least MySCADA has released patches for these issues, right?
Yeah, so anyone using these systems needs to update, like, yesterday.
Because you know that cybercriminals are constantly scanning, looking for those vulnerable systems.
They're always on the lookout.
Speaking of which, there's another vulnerability that's been making the rounds. This one in Zyxel firewalls.
Oh, yeah, I read about that one, too.
So this one is being actively exploited by the Held Down ransomware group.
Held Down? Yeah, they're not messing around.
And the thing is, a patch was available to fix the vulnerability, but attackers are going after these older firmware versions that haven't been updated.
Right, so even when there's a fix out there, not everyone's installing it right away.
It's like leaving the front door unlocked, even though you have a deadbolt.
Exactly, you're just asking for trouble.
Okay, so let's move on to something that might hit a little closer to home for a lot of us. A vulnerability in Bing.com.
Bing! Microsoft search engine.
The one and only.
Wow, I use that all the time.
So this is what's known as a cross-site scripting vulnerability, or XSS for short.
Okay, and what does that mean exactly?
So basically, attackers could inject malicious code into Bing's content management system and then compromise users' Office 365 tokens.
So their emails, calendars, Teams messages, all that stuff.
Yeah, potentially their whole Microsoft world.
That's not good.
Not good at all, and it gets worse.
Hmm.
They could manipulate search results to show bad links, leading people to phishing sites and misinformation.
So you could search for your bank's website and end up on a fake page designed to steal your info?
Exactly. That's the nightmare scenario.
Wow, that's scary.
Thankfully, Microsoft did patch it, but it's a reminder that even the platforms we use every day can have weaknesses.
No system is perfect.
And while we're talking about those trusted platforms with vulnerabilities, let's talk about Veritas Enterprise Vault.
Enterprise Vault. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of organizations use it to archive and manage email and data.
Right. Makes sense.
But it's got some serious vulnerabilities.
Like?
One of them could allow attackers to get root access.
Root access, that's the highest level of privilege, isn't it?
It is pretty much game over if someone exploits that.
Yikes.
Veritas has released patches.
Yeah.
So again, update.
Can't say it enough.
But wait, there's more, and we've got QNAP devices.
QNAP, those are network-attached storage devices, right?
Yep, popular with home users and small businesses.
And what's wrong with them?
So the vulnerabilities affecting them are not good. They could allow remote command injection.
Meaning someone could take control of the device from anywhere.
Exactly, and potentially access all the data stored on it.
Another nightmare scenario.
I know, and these vulnerabilities are pretty easy to exploit. So.
And low-hanging fruit for the bad guys.
Exactly. So we've gone from industrial control systems to firewalls, search engines, enterprise software, and now home storage devices.
It seems like nothing is safe.
It really emphasizes that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility these days.
Absolutely. We all need to be aware of the threats and how to protect ourselves.
Couldn't agree more. But before we wrap things up completely, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture.
That's good.
So the CISO Daily Update also had these special reports that paint a pretty concerning picture of what's coming in terms of cyber threats.
Oh boy. So what are we looking at?
The first report highlights this huge increase in traffic from IoT devices, the Internet of Things.
Right, all those smart devices.
Exactly. Smart home stuff, industrial sensors, connected cars, the whole shebang.
So more devices, more problems.
Yeah, we've seen an 18% rise in traffic from these devices and a 400% surge in malware attacks targeting them.
400%. Wow, that's a huge jump.
It's massive, and it makes sense because a lot of these devices weren't designed with security as a top priority.
Right, they often have weak passwords, outdated software, not a lot of security features.
So they're easy targets for attackers.
It's like leaving a million windows open in your house.
And just hoping no one comes in.
Exactly. So what else is on the horizon? Any other trends we should be worried about?
Okay, so we've gone through a ton of stuff today, like data breaches, vulnerabilities, a glimpse into the future of cyber threats. It can feel a bit overwhelming.
It really can.
So what are the biggest takeaways for our listeners? Like, what should they be thinking about after listening to all of this?
Well, I think the biggest one is that the cybersecurity landscape, it's always changing.
Like a moving target, right?
Exactly what works today might be totally useless tomorrow.
That's a good point.
You have new threats popping up all the time, and the old ones are getting more complex, harder to spot.
So it sounds like we're kind of powerless against all of this.
No, not at all. Awareness is key.
Awareness.
Yeah, you got to understand what kinds of threats are out there, what vulnerabilities to watch for, and what happens if you get hit.
That's what we're trying to do here on the deep dive, right?
Exactly. Give you the knowledge you need to make smart decisions about your own cybersecurity.
Knowledge is power, right?
That's it. So once you get a handle on the risks, you can start figuring out how to reduce them.
So what can people actually do?
Well, you got to start with the basics, strong passwords, and unique passwords for every account.
Not the same one over and over again.
No, definitely not turn on multi-factor authentication whenever you can, and keep all your software and operating systems updated.
Okay, so the basics.
Yep. Those simple things can really make a difference.
Like locking your doors and windows, right?
Exactly. It might not stop the really determined attacker, but it makes it a lot harder for them to get in.
So that's a good starting point. Are there other things people can do?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You can add firewalls to block unauthorized access to your network intrusion detection systems. That'll alert you to anything suspicious, and data encryption to protect sensitive info.
Those are all good ideas. And what about businesses?
For organizations, I'd say security awareness training for employees is a must.
Because people are often the weakest link.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So it's not just about the tech, but about making sure people are aware of the risks, too.
Right. Cybersecurity, it's not a one-time fix. It's something you have to constantly work on.
You got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, it's like staying in shape. You can't just go to the gym once and expect to be fit forever.
You got to make it a habit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to constantly evaluate your security, adapt to new threats, update your defenses.
So vigilance is key.
Absolutely. We can't get complacent in this digital world.
Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we're all in this together.
What do you mean?
I mean, cybersecurity, it's a shared responsibility. It's not just the job of IT professionals or security experts. Everyone has a role to play in protecting themselves and their organizations.
That's a really good point.
We got to stay informed, take proactive steps, and work together to create a more secure digital future for everyone.
I like that. So to our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the crazy world of cybersecurity and that you feel empowered to take some action to protect yourselves.
Stay safe out there, everyone.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next time on the Deep Dive on the Deep Dive.